Hi, Brat second graders. It's so good to see all of you. It's Mrs. Bancherry here. I want to talk to you this week about something called determining the lesson of a story or figuring out what the lesson is in the story that you read. So we know reading is thinking, and readers are always thinking about the characters and how a main character can learn a lesson from others in a story. We can look out for what characters teach each other. So before we take a look at a few stories, we're going to look at some pictures to see if we can determine what is happening and what the lesson of these pictures might be. Are you ready to come along with me on this adventure? Let's get started. So let's take a look at this picture together. I see a woman who just went grocery shopping, and it looks like she has a lot of groceries falling out of her bag. I also see another woman on the ground helping to pick the groceries up. So we can ask ourselves, what lesson do you think we can learn from this picture? If you see someone in need, reach out and help them. That would be what the lesson is by looking at that picture. Let's try this one next. I see what looks like to be friends, and I see the words, please don't be sad. And the one friend has a flower in her hand and she's giving it to the other friend. The other friend is crying. So we can look at the lesson and say, what is it? What can we learn from that picture? Yes, when someone is sad, try to help them feel better. So now, if we look at this picture of the minions, can we think what the lesson might be? This one is a little bit tricky. We're really going to have to think about everything we see that's going on here. Sometimes we need to put a few things we see together to figure out what the lesson is. A few clues given in this picture are the sun is brightly shining. The minions are at what looks like to be the beach. I see water in the background and I see sand. One minion is yellow and the other is bright red. And the one minion, the red one, is crying. So I'm going to show you my thinking with this picture. I know that being in the sun for a long time can cause a sunburn. And I know that can make somebody have red skin. And I know that the crying minion does have red skin. And I see the yellow minion not crying. And the yellow minion is still yellow. So looking at this picture, I think there actually are two lessons that we could learn. The first thing I'm thinking is that the red minion might have learned the lesson that it was not a good idea to stay in that sun for such a long time. Another lesson that that red minion might have learned is that he might have been a little bit better off if he put some sunscreen on when he was at the beach. So, parents, I just want you to remember too that sometimes when children are reading or you're reading to them and they talk about the lesson, there could be more than one. So, I have a short story and we're going to read it together and figure out what the lesson is of this short story. Lou scampered through the park. All the other squirrels were busy gathering nuts for winter, But Lou wanted to enjoy the last warm days of the season instead. A few days later, the air turned cool. Lou's tummy growled. He set out to find some nuts to store for winter. Lou could not find any nuts. All of the other squirrels had already gathered them. Lou worried. He wished he had collected some food to eat. So let's think, what could the lesson be? So when we think about the lesson, we have to think about the characters. And in this story, Lou was one of the main characters. He was the squirrel. Lou did not gather the nuts to put away for when they were needed in the winter. The other squirrels did. He chose to enjoy the warm days instead. When it became cold, there were no nuts left for him to eat. So what lesson do you think he learned? What do you think that Lou learned from the other squirrels in that story? I think that Lou learned he should work first and play later. Now, let's read a chapter from one of my favorite book series. So the book I chose is Days with Frog and Toad by Arnold LaBelle. And you know those characters pretty well. We've read some books about Frog and Toad before. So as we read, we will be thinking about the lesson that Toad learns in the last chapter of this book called Alone. Let's get started. So this chapter is called Alone. Toad went to Frog's house. He found a note on the door. The note said, "Dear Toad, I am not at home. I went out. I want to be alone." "Alone?" said Toad. "Frog has me for a friend. Why does he want to be alone?" Toad looked through the windows. He looked in the garden. He did not see Frog. So on this page, I want you to stop and ask yourself, why is Toad confused on this page? What do you think? Why is he confused? I think he's confused because if he has a friend, why would he want to be alone? Toad went to the woods. Frog was not there. He went to the meadow. Frog was not there. Toad went down to the river. There was Frog. He was sitting on an island by himself. "Poor Frog," said Toad. "He must be very sad. I will cheer him up." Toad ran home. He made sandwiches. He made a pitcher of iced tea. He put everything in a basket. Toad hurried back to the river. "Frog," he shouted, "it's me. It's your best friend Toad." Frog was too far away to hear. Toad took off his jacket and waved it like a flag. Frog was too far away to see. Toad shouted and waved, but it was no use. Frog sat on the island. He did not see or hear Toad. A turtle swam by. Toad climbed on the turtle's back. "Turtle," said Toad, "carry me to the island. Frog is there. He wants to be alone." "If Frog wants to be alone," said the turtle, "why don't you leave him alone?" "Maybe you are right," said Toad. "Maybe Frog does not want to see me. Maybe he does not want me to be his friend anymore." "Yes, maybe," said the turtle as he swam to the island. So I want you to stop and ask yourself, what is Toad thinking on this page? Yeah, he's thinking, he has me for a friend. He wants to be alone. Maybe he doesn't want to be my friend anymore. Maybe that's why he's all alone. Frog, cried Toad, I am sorry for all the dumb things I do. I am sorry for all the silly things I say. Please be my friend again. Toad slipped off the turtle with a splash. He fell in the river. Frog pulled Toad up onto the island. Toad looked in the basket. The sandwiches were wet. The pitcher of iced tea was empty. Our lunch is spoiled, said Toad. I made it for you, Frog, so that you would be happy. But Toad, said Frog, I am happy. I am very happy. This morning, when I woke up, I felt good because the sun was shining. I felt good because I was a frog, and I felt good because I have you for a friend. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to think about how fine everything is. Oh, said Toad, I guess that is a very good reason for wanting to be alone. Now, said Frog, I will be glad not to be alone. Let's eat lunch. This is the page where Frog slows down to explain something important to Toad. He is helping to teach Toad an important lesson. In a story, one character can show another character an important lesson by talking. Frog and Toad stayed on the island all afternoon. They ate wet sandwiches without iced tea. They were two close friends sitting alone together. The end. Now we're going to talk about the lesson. But before we do that, I just want to shout out to parents and say that reading picture books aloud to your child is yet another way to talk about the lesson being learned by a character in a story. So if you're reading a picture book out loud, you can have that conversation and you can ask them, well, what's going on with the characters? And ask them to explain that. And hopefully that will lead to what the lesson might be if there is one in the story. So let's think, what happened with the character Toad? Toad got very upset when Frog went off to be by himself. But then Frog explains, this morning when I woke up, I felt good because I have you for a friend. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to think how fine everything is. This is when one character teaches another something. What lesson do you think that Toad learned in this story? So here's an example where there could be more than one lesson learned. I was thinking all friends need space from each other sometimes. That could be one lesson. Or just because a friend wants to be alone, it doesn't mean they don't want to be your friend anymore. So as you are reading at home, be thinking about the characters and ask yourself if there is a lesson to learn. I miss all of you, and I hope to see you all soon. But for now, happy reading.